Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first live stream, and also welcome to our first podcast episode of ShopFloor Gossip. My name is Andreas. I'm working with KUKA as a sales manager, and this gives me actually the opportunity to talk with a lot of different interesting people around the world. So, my first guest today is Alexander Seuz. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very
I
much,
like your
Andreas.
t-shirt actually.
Yeah, thank you.
So does it is there any meaning for you, Johnny Cash?
There is a very deep meaning. I'm a very big music fan, and I can say that I have a lot of records of Johnny Cash at home. I also read his biography and found his biography very inspiring, so to say, to work yourself up from the ground level to the top and even delivering a message that's very impressive and inspiring. Yes, I'm a very big fan.
Great, great. And that's also the title of our episode today. That's what you asked me to name it. It's Walk of Life. Is
Yeah.
this a little bit an analogy to your development, to your life?
Yes, we can say so because this walk of life or the walking through life is usually a very experience heavy episode in everyone's career. And I think your concept of this shop floor gossip is a very good format to discuss the influences, but also the experiences, the challenges, and yeah, the meaning of making his own walk of life or his own way in life to proceed. And Andreas, thank you very much for the invitation. I am honored.
Thanks a lot for coming. So we had already a meeting in Augsburg a couple of months ago, and we just immediately connected, and I really enjoyed the time and the discussions with you.
Yes, and we can say that came out of the digital world. I mean, me, I'm sitting right now in Ningbo, 250 kilometers in the south of Shanghai. You can see T-shirt is appropriate because we still have 28 degrees, sunshine, high humidity.
Mm.
And I enjoyed our meeting in Augsburg also very much because it showed me that even when you have a very big distance between the people, with the digital networking, you can make it happen to meet, to have an interesting talk, and to connect. And I guess that's also a little bit a guideline in our meeting today.
Absolutely. Very good introduction. And we met first time via LinkedIn. That's interesting. As you mentioned, the digital world made this possible.
Correct.
By
Correct.
the way, I put a background up into behind me, and this is connected to China. Actually, I took this photo in Shanghai. So if anyone knows where I took this photo, just leave it in the comments below. I'm curious if
Yes.
you can recognize it.
Yeah, you, Andreas, you also have
So Alex,
deep experience about China. You had been here many times, and especially with KUKA, I think that's a very good yeah, playground or the acting field, so to say, to connect, so to say, to the Asian world or to China. Yes.
absolutely. And especially if we're talking about automation and robotics, China is the market where we have the biggest growth since many, many years.
Yes.
So when we go a little bit back at the beginning of your career, originally you started is in a vocational training in Germany, right?
Yes, correct. I
And
I did a vocational training in Schott. I actually have to go a little bit back. I was raised in a very small town in the eastern part of Bavaria. 8,000 people lived there. And Schott, a company which is specialized in producing glass tubes for pharmaceutical usage, but also special industry purposes, had a very big plant there with around 1,200 employees. And after the secondary school, I decided to take up a vocational training as an industrial mechanic because me, I was always fascinated by techniques. And I can say I'm a very big fan or the follower, so to say, of the aeronautical world, namely airplanes and helicopters. And this was a little bit the first way into the topic. So I'm not the classical bank employee. I'm more the technical guy. And that's the reason why I did that vocational training. Correct.
And did you imagine at that time already that you would live in China some years later? Was that already an initial plan of you to eventually go to another country?
China for me back then was a destination on the map. I can say that due to that small town experience, I always wanted to go out, you can say to leave. And I imagined to literally lift off and leave the place, but China back then was a destination on the map. Also I
Mm.
couldn't have this in my mind. Also the age, I was, when I started my vocational training, I was 16 years old, and you have a lot of dreams and imaginations how the life is. But you
Right,
can say
right.
it was a first step which initiated this, and later, so to say, the wishes they came true. You can say, yeah, yes,
Maybe for just a small explanation for the followers, maybe not coming from German speaking countries, vocational training is a unique concept. Specifically, I know it from Germany. You get actually a training for around about 3 years, 3.5 years, sometimes later, at a company. And this training is mixed. So it's practical training, and this is mixed with a local school. So this is a training where you at the end get a certificate, and you have let's say the right to work in this job. So that was the basic idea. And you start, as you mentioned, very young age. You start with typically after maybe middle school, you are 16 years old, or some even 15 years old,
yes, correct,
right?
correct, yes. But this was very
And it's a
inspiring.
very hands-on
Yeah,
training, and I really you get a lot of experience in a young age. Yeah.
yes. Maybe I
Mm.
can say a little bit because you described it very well. Um, I was working in the industrial mechanic field. This means I got trained and collected experience in uh, maintaining production machinery, but also in certain
Mhm.
manufacturing processes like latte, milling, drilling, welding, and classical troubleshooting tasks in small SBS control systems, but this was really a very small part, troubleshooting or repair of pneumatical systems. Hydraulics we didn't had. We focused mainly on pneumatics, but this was a very sophisticated training, also in a very good company, because SHOT is very big corporate structure with around 8,000 employees worldwide. So you could
Mhm.
go through all departments and collect a lot of experiences. Yes.
Great, great. So troubleshooting sounds for me a little bit like on-site service. Is
Yes.
this also maybe a little bit of the reason or how you discovered your
Mm.
fascination for other cultures
Yeah.
by
Yes, you can say so because
visiting customers globally and fixing
Mm.
their machines?
It's correct. Your conclusion is correct because after I finished my studying, this was I finished my vocational training, and then I did my university um, entrance allowance, and then finished my studies. Then I started to work for company Kronos, and with Kronos
Mhm.
I dived into that field of on-site service, visiting customers worldwide, troubleshooting of machinery, commissioning, installation, relocation of machinery. It's correct. Yes, it was
Wow.
a follow-up, we can say. Yeah. Yeah.
Krone is also a big multinational
Yes.
company and specialized in fitting machines, for example, right?
Yes. Complete turnkey solutions, we can say. Kronos back then, when I worked there as a service engineer in the international service, they had around 9,000 employees. Now I think they moved up to 18 to 20,000 employees. increased the turnover, but also increased the EBIT. So to say, the other numbers also grew proportionally, over proportionally, we can say, because this food and beverage field is a very good business. And I was in the filling machine segment, but Krones also has blow molding machinery, packaging, inspection machinery, the whole process part for breweries. Let's say the complete spectrum of food and beverage industry. Yeah? And now they even acquired company Netstal, a plastic injection molding machinery. So they have even considering the recycling aspect, the first step of bringing the recycled plastic bottle back into the process via creating the preform, which later goes into the blow molder. So that's a turnkey solution provider on an international basis. Yes.
Mm. Wow. I still remember Netstal from my time in the packaging industry. So specialist for thin mold manufacturing. So for packaging, great.
Yes. Also a
Was
very good
this
company.
the
Yes.
time at Krones? Sorry,
Please.
I, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. Go on. No
No,
problem.
it's okay. So was this at Krones, this time at Krones, was this also the time when you first got kind of fixed to China or exposed to China, let's say it this way?
That's also a very good question. And I have to say yes, because I started to work at Krones in 2011, and we got a kind of, let's say, inside training. This means we we had been working in the hall where the new machinery was put together. Also followed certain machineries on certain assembly steps, and also prepared the machinery in the hall on site for the pre-acceptance when the customer was coming. Traveled already outside. I visit certain spots in Europe. I was in Italy, in Spain, in Austria, but always in a kind of group, so to say, following a group of technical experts going on site. And then after 6 months, I got a call from dispatch, and the question was, can you imagine to start up a water filler in China? And this was a phone call, and as passionate I am, I just said, yes, I can imagine. And they said, okay, no problem. You just come in tomorrow. We will brief you with all the documents. This happened. So I went back to the headquarter, got my briefing, and 4 days later I was sitting in a plane to China, and that was the start of you can say, over 1 year rotation in China with basically new machinery to be installed at customers, commissioned, troubleshooted, and supported to the final acceptance process in various locations in China. So you can say Krones was this company which brought me to China and also created that ignition in my career regarding the Asian exposure or the China exposure. That's correct. Yes.
Wow. And how old were you back then?
2011, I was 33 years old. And when I
Mhm.
started and when I hit China the first time, I was 30, yeah, 33, 34, turning 34. Yes.
Wow, great. I remember first time I went to China, it was similar. Not so long, yeah. I was only there for a couple of weeks, but it was pretty much same approach. It was a decision within days, yeah. And I still remember they had to bring me the visa to the airport because it was
Okay.
such
Okay.
short notice. That
Okay.
was crazy, yeah. That
That's
was
great.
2003 actually.
2003. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I was there the first time 2012. So, but this was also a big difference to now. In the last 12 years, a lot of things changed. But
Mm,
2003, I can imagine it must have been completely different. That was we can say, the beginning of the starting phase in China. Yeah. Yeah.
totally fascinating, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And when we talk about beginning, in China, when you went there in 2012, what kind of thoughts had you back then specifically about the production when you saw this first time in China
Hmm.
compared to what you've seen before?
Okay, I have to say for Kronos, I did mostly a kind of greenfield project approach. Most of the projects we had back then had been for a company Wahaha. Wahaha is one of the biggest um, soft drink filling companies in China. Is a Chinese self-made millionaire, we can say, who founded this empire, and they ordered a lot of machines from Kronos. So I was literally always in the newly built hall where even the windows had not been there and the floor had not been made, but the machine
Oh,
was already standing there and producing. In Germany or in Europe, we cannot imagine this. That also reflects a little bit the fast growth and this very fast approach, this Chinese speed. And this way, so to say, of producing products, or this way of doing business, I think this is a complete different way to the, or the approach to the way we know in Europe, because in China they have the advantage that they can make a decision on Monday, and on Tuesday they're already working on the implementation. This goes, of course, in both directions. This can be positive, but also negative in a kind of growing sense. Also, in regards to production, it's a very big advantage because you can implement things immediately and you have literally, this is also what I learned, all of the resources at any time at hand. If I need a 25 or a 30-ton crane, or maybe I need five, I can have them tomorrow. I don't need to wait 3 weeks. So then tomorrow, maybe in the afternoon, I have them already. That's a very interesting aspect, and I learned also a lot during this time, because we had a lot of challenges also with the installation of the machinery, but also then with the production processes per se, quality wise, so to say, productivity wise. But we could solve all of these things in a very, I would say, streamlined and smooth way, which refers to this classical China speed. So that was my main impression about the
oh,
production back then
oh.
in that kind of industry. Yes.
Mhm. Wow. Because I just was talking to a customer the other day, and he was for a ramp up of a production line in India, and he reported completely different aspects. And I think that brings us also a little bit to your next, let's say, experience.
Yeah.
You not only gathered experience in China, but also in different other countries around the world, for example, in India. And would you say, when you are thinking about specifically automation projects, would
Mm.
you say there are different customer requirements when you travel to different countries, or is it all about efficiency? What comes to your mind?
Of course, efficiency is always a big driving factor. But when I look back to my time in India, this was the career step I made after Kronos. I started to work for a German machinery company in the area of Regensburg, company iTech. This company was specialized in special purpose machinery for final assembly car. And with this
Mm,
company, I did not just work in China, but as you said, also in India. And in India, we worked in CKD plants, and CKD means completely knocked down. This means you can literally, how to say, imagine it as a very half automatic, semi automatic production process, completely different to China, where we have a full automatic approach. I mean, you have also in India full automatic lines, but the projects I worked for in the automotive segment after Kronos for this company iTech, we had projects with Audi and Auto Skoda India. And these plants, they had, for example, they had tech modes when the car was built. and the cars from tech number 1 to tech number 2, they had been moved by hand by the workers, just
Oh,
shifted into the next tech. And then the different assembly steps, for example, for the dashboard, for the panorama roof, worked out with, let's say, half automatic or semi automatic devices on a, I call it now, very classical mechanical level. So this means no robots, manipulators, and handling devices on a very, I call it now, simple design basis, but effective design basis. And these assembly devices I met in India, they had been completely different to certain assembly steps in China I experienced in my automotive career. For example, in China, I worked on a door sealing project. This means you have the main door of the car, and around the door you have to apply the sealing. And in China, they did this via a robot. So you had actually a KUKA robot with a very big application tool, which was driving around and applying the sealing, cutting the sealing in the end, and even bringing the butt joint together, fully automatic, classical robot cell scenario. In India, they brought the doors manually, brought a kind of template they fixed on the door, and then a worker came with a predefined sealing and applied the sealing step by step via hand. And
by
it
hand.
was also very well working, but of course, you have differences in the cycle time. You have differences in the approach, and of course, you also face different quality scenarios. So there was a very big gap, and I think there is already, or there's still a very big gap between China and India. India is now ramping up a lot, but China made such a big approach in fully automated production processes in the last 10, 15 years. That's amazing. That's a different level.
Mm. Thanks a lot for sharing these insights. That's amazing. Yeah. These differences, I would not have expected it. I would actually have expected that if you go to such lines from one customer, that you maybe have the same, more or less the same line concept, no matter where the country or where the plant is located, in which country. Great. When we, by the way, yeah, if you haven't done so far, please like, follow, and subscribe to this channel.
Yes, please.
And also maybe let us know, this is the first time we are doing this kind of live stream and podcast episode. We chose the vertical format. Let us also know in the comments below if you prefer vertical or maybe more horizontal, classical way. When I come back to the first project I was working on in China in 2003, coming back to what you just mentioned, that the automation level changed tremendously in the last years in China. At that time, 2003, we were just losing, or we were just about to lose a big project in a Chinese customer. I brought the right appropriate coffee mug. Yeah. I was working for this company. So we were about to lose a production line, because we assumed with a labor cost of maybe $2 per hour, you would never quote a fully automatic line. And the specifications were kind of soft. So we quoted manual. And we learned that we were about to lose because we did that. Because at that time, when we're talking about automation, everything was about just, efficiency. But in China at that time, what I learned, at least at this customer, it was more a different approach. It was more about quality, to have a stable process in the production. And this is why this customer wanted to have a fully automatic truck line. Is this one of the main drivers, maybe this quality or this high level of quality which Chinese customers want to achieve for automation, or is this just maybe too simple to say so? What would you say is driving that huge growth of in automation in China?
That's a very good question. Of course, you always have the cost factor for certain assembly or production processes. You have on the other side the influence of I call it now, political driven concept, because, for example, if you have CKD manufacturing, as so to say, hand built processes or hand built executed processes, you have the topic that uh, it's simple to recover. But for China, it's very important now to outline to the world that they drive in the Chinese speed, and they are highly sophisticated with production processes, and therefore the robotic or fully automated production is a must, not just in regards to quantity and output, but
Right.
also to appear modern, technology driven, and you could say fully state of the art production. Um, Another criteria is, and this I also experienced in my career in China, but this is a common topic worldwide. But we can say it's maybe a little bit more serious in China when you have personnel which is qualified for certain processes, and then suddenly they quit and go to another company.
Mm.
You're losing literally the process. Of course, you have to internally do trainings to have also the other staff being trained in that special area, but that's always a kind of indicator that you might lose that technology know-how. The second point is
Mm.
that for highly automated production lines, you have the advantage that you can ramp up to an extremely high quantity always on the same quality level, because the robot, it does it 1,000 times, 1 million times, 6 million times. It is not a difference. You don't have the classical influencing factors like heat, stress. The robot doesn't know this. It's just working off the task from A, B, C to D. That's also an indicator. And you have, I would say, um, as the production in China gets more and more complex, as there is a shift that the normal manufacturing is, let's say, not so, I don't want to say popular anymore, but for example, if you're working now in a very, I call it now, dirty or environmental heavy industry,
Mm.
maybe it's not so popular anymore in China compared to if you work in the semiconductor industry, which is a very clean and
Yes.
sterile industry, we can say, right? And therefore,
You can literally eat from the floor.
you can eat from the floor in the clean room,
Mm.
correct? Yes, and then the robots coming, so to say, automatically. And I guess this is also the big challenge in China now, that of course, we also need the mechanics, but we want to have the people who can work in highly technology driven surroundings, learn from it, and so to say, grow further on that level. So, therefore, in China, in the last 10, 15 years, there is a very strong tendency to
Mm.
automated robot driven processes. That's correct.
And that's what we also see from the official figures when we're talking about consumption of robots.
Yes,
The biggest market for robots is still China for many years.
yes.
And when you talk about, let's say, change or velocity of change, um, just a couple of weeks ago, I had the chance to visit China again. That was my first time after Corona crisis. So I think I was one of the last ones who was still able to visit to China shortly before the Corona crisis. And I just came back the first time after a couple of weeks, and I was stunned. I was really stunned what happened during these just maybe 4 years. I
Mhm.
haven't visited the country, so for me it looks like it's an exponential change what is going on.
Yes.
um, what would you say is the biggest change when you compare it maybe to your beginning in China in 2012? Is it automation? Is it the processes?
No, it's the automation, it's the processes, but it's also the competition, because let's say in the manufacturing field, you have now a lot of local competitors, which have, of course, a certain kind of local advantage, you can say.
Mm.
You have the technology expertise, which grew up in the last 5 to 10 years. So you have very good personnel in China, maintenance personnel, engineers, project managers, uh, personnel which can deal with all kinds of complex processes. So we can say China learned a lot and learned very fast and adapted also very fast, implemented this kind of knowledge and technology which came into the country on a very fast pace into their production processes. And the competition, I would say,
Mm.
gets more and more challenging. On the other side, I have to say, I was at an medical device exhibition from last week, Wednesday to Friday, the MedTech in Shanghai. As for my current employer, we also delivering products into the medical
Oh.
device or the medical technology industry.
Mm.
And in this special field, in which the government is investing a lot, and we could see this also at the exhibition. Um, there are a lot of even Chinese companies who are in that field who say, I want to have a Western company as supplier because they know there is a certain expertise which grew up over 30, 40, 50, let's say 100 years. And that is also still very much appreciated in the Chinese market for the Chinese customers. But of course, you also have a kind of strong competition because a lot of Chinese people, they went to Europe, studied there, for example, in Berlin, in Karlsruhe, in Munich, came back to China, and then also made very strong careers, adapted or implemented that knowledge from the West into the processes in China, and then created also a very competitive field. So it's a very dynamic and challenging market, and I would say the competition, so to say, changed. I mean, Andreas,
Mm.
from your perspective, I mean, with KUKA or with the robotic field, how do you see this? Because I remember there is a company in Shenyang in the northeast of China. It's called Seuz Robotics. That's a 100% Chinese company. I visited them in 2018, and I have to say I also had been amazed how far they went with own development. How do you see this in that robotics field, competition wise?
Yep. Competition is fierce and growing. We have a lot of new players on the market, specifically from China. I think you could see it already a couple of years ago, starting with the cobots. So
Mm,
many cobot startups from China coming to the market. And now we see it also in the industrial robotics section, like what you mentioned, Siasan, but there's another one,
mm.
Estun,
Yes,
and also expected, I think, to have shortly the market entry in Europe. And what we also see, it's not just a robotics manufacturer. I see also that the competition is getting fiercer and fiercer
mm,
in Europe. We get, for example, Chinese battery manufacturers who starting up transplants in Europe, and with them come the Chinese line builders actually, because so far it is also difficult for European OEMs to identify European line builders who can handle a turnkey project
mm,
for battery production from the cell all up to the, let's say, to the modules and the packs. And so it is the Chinese line builders coming not only for these projects for in Chinese transplant to the European markets, but also competing with traditional line builders
mm,
in Europe.
mhm. So we can see a shift actually from now Chinese turnkey solution providers trying to push into the European market, right?
Yes, traditionally, for the last decades, maybe China was mainly seen as a market where you could export your equipment.
Yes.
And now I think it's a mutual way. It's both directions.
True.
So,
True.
and
Interesting
also
times.
it's
Yes.
interesting for me to see the quality level you get.
There are still, I would say, differences. I mean, there are very, very high qualified suppliers. For example, there's this battery supplier CATL, which is located in Ningde. That's in the southeastern part of China. They built now a plant in Thüringen in eastern Germany.
Anstatt,
Yes,
yes,
and they will supply the batteries, as far as I know, for Tesla in Berlin and for Mercedes-Benz, as far as I know. So there is very interesting things going on. Yes, the markets are shifting.
absolutely.
Yes,
Yep. Everything is getting very dynamic.
yes,
And what I also just saw a couple of weeks ago is there is always coming out the statistics about consumption of robots per 100,000 um, inhabitants in a country. And what is interesting, so this is not to break it down, yeah. So you have a figure which is not just depending on the size of a market, but actually you put it in relation to the people living there.
yes,
And for me, it was interesting that just a couple of weeks ago, with the new statistics, it was evident that China overtook the US in terms of installed robots per 10,000 inhabitants.
yes,
So that shows a little bit the dynamics going on in this market.
yes.
Would you say this is already then maybe the summit of automation? Is this the peak, what we see? Or is there more to expect in the future, specifically in China?
I think there is more to expect in the future. I guess currently, as we have for Chinese relations a relatively slow GDP growth, but that's a temporary effect of the, I call it now the of the Corona time. Uh, but we can say everything is in place here for the next step. This might take a certain time. I don't want to lean now out of the window to define it time wise, but we will definitely see a, a next step coming. And I guess this next step will be very, let's call it digitalized and AI driven, which also affects this robotic and automation field.
Right.
And therefore, we have everything in place here, as a manpower wise, working wise, know how wise, to go to that next step. This I'm fully convinced. For me, the important question is, and I guess this is also interesting for you, how Europe, respectively Germany, will, so to say, try to counterbalance this new approach, this kind of competition, because we all know we have in Germany, we have still a lot of technology know-how. We have very good solution providers. We have um, expertise over, we can say, hundreds of years. And I am convinced, of course, speed wise, this will be different, but I guess it will be also a kind of approach level which might change, because with the e-mobility we can see already, we know lithium batteries will not be the future. There will be a shift coming, and
Mm.
now everyone is
Right.
talking about this solid state battery. And there I know
Yes.
that Germany is not just Germany, but Germany, I think with BMW, is already investigating in that field, and this might also bring shifts to the market, as the e-mobility approach might be also transformed in the future. We will go in that direction, but there will be certain additional things coming in which might change this. And therefore, I have the deep belief that uh, Germany also has a very good, or the Europe will have a very good stand in this kind of cooperation field, because generally it's a cooperation, right? Doing business means also to cooperate on a certain level, and not just competition is good, but we also need cooperation. Yes.
Right. And I believe it's becoming more and more important to find partners where you cooperate with, so that you don't have to do everything by yourself. Maybe traditionally, when I go into the robot, you wanted to deliver the full scope from one manufacturer, and today I think it's more about options.
True.
For example, the vision system you already mentioned today, it's very important in all kinds of industry to also have some vision and vision systems. They just had an unbelievable, let's say, change in the capability, what they can handle, what they can do due to artificial intelligence, to AI
Yes.
in the last 4 to 5 years. So today it's about options, giving customers options, so you collaborate with different vision companies because each of them has their specific know-how, their specific experience.
Yes.
That's a good, very, very good aspect to have this in mind, to find collaborative partners.
Yes.
But do you think with the speed coming from China that in Europe, with our mindset, I'm just talking about work-life balance, no one wants to work at the weekend and so on, no
Mm.
night shift, oh, please not. Do you think we can still be competitive with this mindset?
Yeah, let's say, of course, if this would be a general mindset, then it might be a topic. But I would say that the classical definition of German engineering was always, okay, we have a problem. Now we have to go to the problem and we have to solve it. And I have the deep belief that this kind of attitude is still there. And this is also a very good foundation to build on. But I agree, we need a kind of evaluation of priorities. I mean, of course, the people, they need a kind of work-life balance. I agree. You cannot push employees 80 hours, 90, 100 hours a week into the tasks. But this is, I would say, this is necessary to meet in the middle. And I think that for certain technologies, there is still a cooperation will also between China, Europe, and America. Now we have this semiconductor topic, which is also influencing this automation field a lot. And I think it will be about compromises, not just on the global political level, but also in the society. And then I am
Mm.
convinced that especially companies like Kronos, food and beverage field, pharmaceutical companies, we have in Germany, we have very good packaging machinery providers for food, for pharmaceutical solutions. And we can see that they are still on a very good business level, even in the Chinese market. So therefore, I think there will be a kind of sorting out, I call it, but there will be also a kind of redistributing of the different segments. And then I have the deep belief after balancing and meeting in the middle, we still have a good chance to compete in that market. We have to stay positive. Let's say like this.
Right.
Yes.
That's very important. Yeah, absolutely. And which advice would you maybe give to a European general manager in your industry?
I
Staying positive is a very good
That's a good thing
aspect to
already.
start with.
Yes, yes, yes. I would say in my career in China, I started with automotive, and then I came to a C-part component, metal component manufacturing supplier. Currently, I'm working for a Danish company in Ningbo. I would say the experience I collected in China is that, first of all, communication to the headquarter is very important. Transparency, which you can say also includes compliance, but also transparency in that way to say, make the headquarter understand that the market, the business, and the approach in this very dynamic driven market in China is different than in Europe. And
Mm.
there need to be a kind of adaptation to that mode. A simple example, in Germany, it can be that when an RFQ is coming in, the quotation will be sent out. It does not matter for which field, even in the machinery field. It takes, let's say it takes 2 months, for example, for the machinery field. But in China, for a similar technology, they do that maybe within 2 weeks. Now, of course, we have to consider, is, so to say, has everything covered regarding the RFQ, had all details worked out, but we can see there a very big difference. So to say, speed is a very big indicator in China. The way of doing things, so to say, the mentality also of the workforce, and also the mentality of the customers in China, the expectation is different. So therefore, it's also important to keep this on a very good transparency level, because we can be sure about one thing. Europe is not China, and China is not Europe. But if I want to do business in China,
Right.
then I cannot expect to implement everything how it is in Europe. There needs to be an adaptation, a kind of balance in this. And
Understanding
this is,
also
yeah,
for the other requirements and culture.
cultural difference, right? You need a kind of culture bridge. And the good thing is, that's not bad, it's learning. And learning is also adapting. And only learning will bring us further. And this is also what I can say for my career. It is always learning, or we can say life is problem solving, which means actually learning. This is
Yeah,
a very good
absolutely.
saying in the end, I would say, to answer that question. Yes.
Great. We're already almost at the end of
Okay.
this episode. One last question. In one of your posts, you mentioned something what resonated with me. You mentioned one should chase their dreams. What is yours?
Self-fulfillment, I call it. And until now, I reach that always because with these kind of changes in my life, so to say, being raised in a very small town, then went to Berlin to study into the big city. This was already a jump into the cold water. Then starting to work for Kronos International. Then moving to China with my family in 2016. I just can give one advice to the people. Try to see changes in a positive way, and always run after the changes in your life. You just can learn. And that's a very interesting approach to get self-fulfillment inside about life, because life is learning. This is, I would say, the answer to that question. Self-fulfillment. Yes.
Yeah. So leave your comfort zone and
Yes.
grow
Yes.
with the changes.
Go outside
Great.
and chase your dream.
Yeah.
Very simple. Yes.
But yeah, very simple. But many people don't like to leave the comfort zones, right? And I think that's very encouraging to just try it out. You can only grow
You can only
and
grow.
improve yourself.
Yes.
Perfect.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you,
Was a
Andreas.
nice talk.
Yeah, very good.
And I'm now really interested from our viewers. Maybe they want to share some of their own experience, what they learned from working in different companies and in different countries. And yeah, please share some of your experience in the comments down below. Also, maybe let us know if you have additional questions to Alexander. I'm sure he will answer them if you leave them in the comments. And of course, do not forget to subscribe, to like this live stream, and to ring the bell. So next time we have the next episode, you don't miss it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. And I would say that's all for today.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.